The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello and welcome to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
The sudden rise of science tubes! That is known as Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him.
Alright, so last week we kind of concluded the Hammer series, but sort of didn't conclude the Hammer series. So we've got this kind of little odd, side quest almost in the Hammer story, Tales of Frankenstein.
Yep, if we do a few more of these, we can fight the final boss and not have to worry about dying.
Yeah, so the thing about this, it's basically, it's pretty much a very straightforward Frankenstein story. It doesn't do a lot of new stuff, but it has this opportunity that, there could have been a Frankenstein show, and it would have been... Hopefully, as it went, it would have gotten to go to some really interesting, unique places. So it's very disappointing that this is all we have. Yeah, if you don't know, this is Hammer had recorded or filmed this pilot that was going to be an American Frankenstein television show. So it's a Hammer production, but it had a lot of American cast and crew and stuff. Most notably, it was written and directed by Curt Siodmak, who wrote the Wolfman, the original Universal Wolfman, and I think he did some Karloff movies like The Ape and Black Friday, and did Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman and House of Frankenstein. So he's written some stuff that we've dealt with already on the show, which is weird. I think his brother directed a lot of noir movies and is probably the more famous of the two brothers, but they both did a lot of cool stuff.
So, also, as you said, this started basically at the beginning of the Hammer Frankenstein journey, 1958, right? Whereas Curse of Frankenstein started in 1957. And, as you said, we've got the chance for a Frankenstein television show. And honestly, I think if they had waited until 1980-something, this probably would have taken off a lot better, a lot faster, and we wouldn't just have one episode. Yeah. Right. But let's get into it. Let's go ahead and start this puppy.
All right, yeah. So we kind of the opening credits has a voiceover. You can tell it's a TV show. It's kind of setting up. You got this narrator kind of setting you that this is but one of many tales of Frankenstein. So unfortunately, it is just the one. But in another way, it that's the whole point of this podcast is there are many tales of Frankenstein. And even though this didn't get to give us as many as we'd hoped, it still exists, which is nice. And of course, during the credits, it's you see grave robbing, you see labs, and then you also have this weird, head in a crystal ball.
What was that about?
I don't know.
It was a dude was wearing a mask and doing the what is her name? Madam something or other from the Haunted Mansion ride?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess maybe that was going to be something that they would have gotten to in another episode. I don't know.
Eventually. And I was like, oh, is this the narrator? That's a weird thing to have a narrator. No, it was just a random head spirit in a ball. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So that's kind of how the credits end, and then we get the dark and stormy night, and there's a bunch of servants that are leaving the castle, and they're but it's can't we stay? And it's raining, and they're the Baron does not want any servants sleeping over.
No servants sleep over tonight.
And so of course we know why. That it cuts to the lab, and we've got the creature bolted down to the slab, and the lightning out the window, and the science gear going. And
this is like the quickest they've ever just gotten straight to it. Monster on a slab, electricity, weird balls that actually I think are Tesla coils going off. This is like the most dangerous set, Anthony, of everything we've seen.
Yeah.
And like you can actually hear the static from the electricity as I guess the camera crew moves in, and we get a better shot of like the monster and like I said, the science tubes, and
Yeah. And I mean, like, it makes this is a half hour. This is like like not even like a an hour long show. So we got to get down to business.
Yeah.
Can't drag our feet too much.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Yeah. And so then, I mean, pretty much right away, like, Frankenstein, like, turns the crank, angles the table up vertically, and the monster starts, like, breathing and twitching and tries to break free as he does.
Yeah, this monster's got some weird headgear on.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing was really... I guess... Because the monster does look very universal. Like, it's got our flat top kind of thing going on. But I think maybe, like... He didn't have the neck bolts, though, did he?
No.
So I think this is the replacement for the neck bolts, is that he's got this weird sort of like metal thing that kind of, I don't know, goes like it outlines around. It's like a silhouette of his head, like that he just kind of squeezes his head into.
Right. It's kind of like his head is in a vice almost.
Yeah.
And he's got like weird tubes coming off of either side. I literally in my notes I literally wrote down Hatsune Manku. Because he kind of looks like Hatsune Miku in monster form with that contraption on his head, right?
Yeah. You're not wrong. But yeah, so then like he's like, he goes to like try to attack the doctor, and he kind of like Frankenstein pulls out like a hypo that he's gonna try to like knock him out, and the creature starts choking him, and then like I'm not sure if it's intentional on Frankenstein's part or if it's kind of an accident from getting shoved, but either way, he bumps into like, one of those good Frankenstein electrical switches, and sparks go everywhere, shoot out of the switch, and also shoot out of the headgear.
Right. That was pretty cool. That was actually pretty cool for a television show.
Yeah, the effects there look good.
Yeah, I mean, the monster's convulsing and, it looks like he's being electrocuted, which on the set might be a thing that's actually happening, but we don't know.
But yeah, sparks are flying and he collapses. And then, you get Frankenstein and he's like, the monster's brain came from a murderer and the murderer's desires continued. So where can I find the brain of a good man?
Right, yeah. He still wants to kill because he's a murderer, because that's what murderers do. They just kill. They have no other impulses. I love you, weird psychology. Or faux psychology, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got to get the right brain. We've got to find a person who is good, upright, and just a wholesome person. Cut to a tavern or / inn with a couple, Christina and Paul Halbert, I believe was their name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they're coming in because Paul's sick. He's coughing. He looks weak, frail. He's sick. There's only one person that could help him, Anthony.
Yeah, they travel all this way just to see Frankenstein, and they never really say what he's like, how he is sick. It's very unclear.
It's very generic. He is ill because writing says so.
Yeah, I almost thought it was going to end up being like lycanthropy or something. Like it felt like the the Wolfman movies with Frankenstein, where like Talbot needs help. But the best part is like in the pub, he's like, I just can't go on much longer. And she's like, don't worry, Baron Frankenstein can help you. And like,
right.
The bar just gets dead silent.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that she said it out loud and everyone's like, oh no. But also, you've heard the stories. He doesn't heal people. He just brings the dead back. He does the kind of the opposite of what you want. He waits until you die to heal you.
And so like as soon as like they realize that they've kind of upset everybody in the pub, they're like, I guess let's just go on over to see Frankenstein now. They were going to stay the night and go first thing in the morning.
Yeah. I like that exchange, by the way, where Paul's like, after everyone's like, we're going to kill you now. You know that, right? Basically staring daggers at the couple. He's like, get the carriage. And she's like, well, tonight? We're going to leave tonight? He's like, no, we're leaving now. We're leaving right now. He knows what's up.
When she said Frankenstein, it reminded, I don't know if you remember these, there used to be these stupid commercials for, I think it was like Pace Salsa or whatever.
New York City! Yep. Yes, I do.
Yep. That was the vibe that all the people in the pub got, was that she had just made a tremendous faux pas.
I like that salsa from New York City. Yeah. Gosh, I'll always remember something stupid from the early 90s and 80s, but I won't remember anything that important that happened last week.
Yeah,
but anyway.
So they head over to see Frankenstein, and they meet him at the door, and, Frankenstein's like, what do you want? Why are you here? And so they kind of tell him, we need your help. Paul is sick and dying. We heard you can create or extend life or something like that.
Yeah, you can heal people, right? You can keep people going. In a manner of speaking.
Yeah, and Frankenstein's like, no, you've heard some nasty rumors, but that's not true.
Yeah.
And then because he can't resist himself, he's like, you have really good hands. Are you an artist by any chance?
Paul, you got really good hands. It's a little creepy, but also it's like, you know what he's thinking. Paul's like, oh no, this dude's flirting with me. And we know.
Yeah, he's just always shopping for body parts.
Right?
You do not want to get a compliment from Frankenstein.
No. No. If a hammer Frankenstein compliments you, you know you're going to die soon. Don't eat anything he serves you.
And don't go on any shortcuts that he sends you on.
Or near any stairs to look at a painting. There's a lot of things not to do.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah.
But yeah, so he's basically like, no, I can't help you. You need to go talk to a normal doctor.
Right.
So they kind of give up and leave, but they don't really give up too hard because they go see a normal doctor in town. They don't go home.
Right.
But meanwhile, then Frankenstein, he's got the creature kind of wrapped back up in the mummy bandages back on the slab, and he's like, in 3 more days you'll live again.
Right.
So he must have done a little bit of a diagnosis on Paul's situation.
Yeah, he's like, I just gotta wait this guy out. I just have to literally not do anything, and I'll get everything I want. But we then skip to a doctor actually diagnosing Paul and saying, "There's nothing he can do. This is it. This is the end of Paul's life. There's not much we can do to it."
Yep. There's no cure.
Yeah.
And they're like, do you have any connection to Frankenstein? Can you convince him to help us?
Right.
And the doctor's like, no, no, I don't know what Frankenstein does up there in his castle, but I don't want any part of it. He's not my friend. I don't have any connection to him.
Right. We know he's doing something shifty up there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, they get in a little bit of a arguing match. This would be Christine and the doctor. And of course, she screams out, "Does the medical profession know everything?" Ma'am, you're speaking to a doctor. 2, Frankenstein is a medical professional to a degree, right?
Yeah. So I mean, she's clearly someone who is in that horrible phase where you're having to grieve before the actual death has taken place. So she's kind of in that anger stage.
A little bit of bargaining.
Yeah. And so, of course, then, the next scene is, Paul has died, and, we're at the funeral, and Frankenstein attends Paul's funeral. He comes up to her, and he's like, somehow I feel a little guilty.
I kind of did nothing, so I feel really bad about that.
Yeah, and she's not having it. She's like, your sense of guilt will not bring back my husband.
No, but of course, it's time for everyone to leave, so Frankenstein goes up to the caretaker and says, "Tell you what, leave this grave open, and here's some money for you for your troubles,
Yeah, somebody's paid you to bury this coffin, but they didn't say how long it needed to take you. I'm going to pay you to not work."
Right. All you have to do is take it easy for a couple hours.
Yeah.
That's it.
Who wouldn't take him up on that offer?
Yeah, come on.
And so, of course, you know what he's getting up to. And then it's the next morning, Christina goes to put flowers on the grave and sees that it's not buried.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, Yeah, but she also finds a locket that happened to belong to Paul.
Yeah, so she definitely knows what's going on at this point. Or actually, she doesn't immediately jump to the conclusion that it's Frankenstein, surprisingly.
Right. Yeah.
So she like goes to the inn and like finds the gravedigger instead, and is like, "Why didn't you bury my husband? Like the grave's been violated. I'm gonna go talk to the police."
Right. Then he tries to gaslight her for a little bit. He's like, "Nah, you're mistaken. I did the burying. The burying was the thing that I did." And she's like, "Nah." She calls him on it.
And so finally, she kind of like is able to sort of threaten him that if he doesn't tell her what's going on and why he didn't bury her husband, that she's gonna report him to the police. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Okay, Frankenstein did pay me to not bury your husband."
Right.
And she's like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Are you going to go to the police?" And she's like, No. Why would I go to the police? I know who I need to go talk to."
Right, yeah. It's like, these are the experiments he's been doing. Everyone else knew, but she had to, it took her a while to catch on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so she, like, immediately goes to confront him. And again, he's like denying it. "I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't have anything to do with this." And then there's like a crash upstairs.
Right. Yeah.
So that's again, we get all those scenes where like somebody's, when you need to be quiet and hide, like there's always the noise, and
those monsters are like kids, Anthony. They just give it away every time.
Yeah. So Frankenstein actually like pushes her outside and runs upstairs, but she just immediately like follows him. She's not going to be turned away that easily.
And this is kind of something that like I was like, did he put the monster in Paul's clothes? Or when he put the brain in the monster, did that change his outfit? Or did him resurrecting Paul wholesale, like, turn him into a monstrified version of himself?
Yeah.
Do you get what? Yeah, it's like, I think he's just wearing the same clothes. He's not wearing the same clothes the monster was wearing, I don't think.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's like talking, but it is like the monster, and he's like, "Your name is Paul Halvard. Like, do you remember your past? Do you remember who you are?" The monster kind of seems like, or he says like, "Raise your hands if you understand." And he kind of, he does. Christina is obviously like, she's kind of come into the doorway at this point and sees what's going on.
Right.
And so like, once the creature sees her, he kind of like, finally, like, he breaks his chains and like starts like leaving the lab, and of course that scares Christina, and she runs and falls down the stairs.
But she falls from like the fourth from the bottom step. No, but it's enough to knock her out.
Yeah.
But I was like, "Oh, is she dead? Did she die from that fall? Is that what we're going with?" But...
Yeah, she's definitely like out. And so then we get like, one of those good, like the creature carrying the collapsed woman scenes. This movie is basically like all the bullet points of like all of the touchstones we've seen in previous movies, just kind of like collected together in one very streamlined form. Right. So, you get the monster carrying the woman, and then you get the monster seeing himself in the mirror and like, being upset by his own appearance. And so he drops her and smashes the mirror and, does all that.
Right. It's like they kind of saw that the Frankenstein movie from like 1931 was about an hour, and they're like, "We're going to speedrun this shit."
Yeah.
And they effectively they do a very good job. But so as the monster picks up and carries Christina away, Baron Frankenstein comes out with his gun. He's like, "Stop or I'll shoot." But of course, the monster being a monster doesn't really care.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
So he shoots him a couple of times, and it does not stop him. He just kind of like keeps lumbering at him. And then, because this is the greatest hits, he has to pick up Frankenstein and throw him out a window.
Right. Defenestration always happens.
But this is like a ground story window, so like he's fine.
Yeah.
It's not like, the castle window or anything.
But also at this point, Christina wakes up and she's fine too, basically. So just a little bump on the head.
Yeah, so now we've got Frankenstein outside. He goes like running. The creature climbs out the window after him. He takes off following him. Christina goes out into the woods too. So you just have this kind of like chaotic scene where like all three of them are running through the woods separately, and we don't know who's trying to catch who and what's it's just like, you can't see the trajectory or anything, so it's just like anonymous trees around them and they're just running.
But then they end up in a graveyard.
Yeah, of course. And so they kind of have like a fight in a graveyard, and Christina catches up to them and convinces them to stop. She kind of has this like speech that she gives where she's like, Frankenstein did what we asked him to do.
Right.
So we can't really be mad. Like, your life was short, but, at least what you had was good. You don't want to throw that all away just because... She says, don't throw it all away because of a hideous face and a grotesque body.
She hates on him. Sorry, go ahead. But yeah, she gives him some shade.
Yeah, hideous face and grotesque
body. Jeez.
Yeah.
You know what I would have done at that point? I would have done what the monster does and throw myself into the grave.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, if she didn't, like, I mean, she basically killed him verbally at this point anyway.
Right, literally, yeah.
Yeah, and so he just, like, falls into the grave and somehow falls so hard that he, like, knocks the grave in on himself as he falls.
That's really hard. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, if you could do that, you wouldn't even need a grave digger. Like, you could just chuck the coffin in and the grave would bury itself.
Right, you're like a thwomp from Mario. You just go thwum. But anyway, so of course, since now the monster his monster is buried, Baron Frankenstein's like, I've gotta hop in here and dig him up real quick to make sure he's okay, even though his wife has just verbally slaughtered him.
And then, of course, the authorities arrive and they're like, you're under arrest for grave robbing, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then the episode ends, like, he just, like, gives a monologue right, like, staring down the barrel of the camera, just, like, looking right at you.
Right.
He's talking to the cops, but he's talking to us.
Right, he's like, you do your job, officer, I'll do mine.
Yeah, and he's like, he says something like, I don't think either of us would try to stand in the way of each other's destinies. Mm-hmm. You can take me away if you have to, but time is of a small matter. Like, you see, there's always tomorrow. So,
yeah.
Definitely setting it up like, yeah, you can arrest me today, but next week, episode 2's dropping, and I'll be back.
That's right. If only.
Yeah. But unfortunately for Frankenstein, episode 2 never came, and he just languished in jail, I guess.
Yeah. For eternity. Or maybe he was one of the odd Frankensteins that somehow broke free and is running around the countryside as Dr. Stein or Dr. Victor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, not really an abrupt ending, but I actually think, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's, it doesn't do anything mind-blowing. Like, it's, like we keep saying, it's basically the greatest hits of all these movies we've been talking about. It's kind of a mashup of Universal and Hammer, although, it does a much better job of mashing those up than, like, the actual Universal Hammer co-production movie.
Yeah.
So there is that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just one of those things that it's like frustrating. It's just like this opportunity that we missed. Like, this could have been really cool. Like, I don't know where... I've heard that, like, some of the later Hammer Frankenstein movies plots were sort of based on ideas that they've been kicking around in the writer's room for this show.
Right.
I think Frankenstein Created Woman might have been one of those.
I believe you are correct.
So, like, I guess we did kind of get, at least that work didn't go to waste.
Completely, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, like, the idea of there being, like, a long run, like, I don't think there's really ever been, like, a Frankenstein show. There's, like, the Munsters or something, but, like...
Yeah, here's the weird thing. Like, they keep trying to make Frankenstein shows. Like, there was one in the 90s, but once again, it was just episode 1.
Oh, that's Struck by Lightning? Is that...
I think so. It's one where... the monster is actually like the policeman, and he's got a assistant with him, and Frankenstein is the real monster who's like a mechanical man or something like that.
Okay.
Basically, what we're saying is, if you see a Frankenstein TV show, it's probably episode 1, and that's probably the only episode you're going to get.
Yeah, there was a Netflix show a couple years ago that I think actually managed to get 2 seasons.
Oh.
And I forget what it's called. It's
The Frankenstein Chronicles, is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's decent. It's a little dry, and like it suffers from like Netflix series syndrome, where it's just kind of like they didn't really know what to do, you know. Like Netflix kind of like green lights a lot of shows, and then like they're not always the best. You know, maybe someday we'll cover that, because I watched it as it like when it came out, and I haven't seen it since. I wouldn't mind revisiting it. But yeah, I mean, like something, you know, this just felt like it could have been really, really cool. Like, yeah, definitely an opportunity that we all collectively missed out on because the pilot never got picked up.
Right. And honestly, if they've gone back to the well in the 80s, I think Hammer still had a presence. It wasn't as strong as, you know, during the Frankenstein days, but, you know, I think they could have done something with it had they thought about it at the time.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean, at least we do have this. There's a lot of show pilots that, like, never see the light of day even, are in development and never even get a pilot shot at all.
Right.
So there is that, and, you know, it's nice that it's just kind of in the public domain and you can just find it wherever. The copy that I have is actually, it's a double feature. It's this and... The Terror, the Roger Corman, Jack Nicholson, Boris Karloff movie.
That's so wild to think that Boris Karloff, Jack Nicholson, and, you know, those guys were all in one movie at some point.
Yeah, like I think it's like it's Nicholson's like first role, I think, or I mean,
pretty close to it.
Yeah,
I think he was one of the Disney kids, and yeah.
And it's one of Karloff's last like features, but yeah, it's a funny double feature. Like they don't really go together, but I think they're just both like, hey, these are things that are, you know, you find those collections of horror movies that are like, these are a bunch of public domain things that like Mill Creek can just throw together on like those double discs where you can put like 8 movies on 2 DVDs and, you know, charge you $12, and they're like, you know, the checkout at like Walmart or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, like if you have not seen this, it's very easy to find. It's probably on YouTube. But yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. It's, you know, it's a half hour, and you can't see a more complete Frankenstein story in a shorter window of time than this.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's actually still pretty good. I mean, like we said, it's not going to blow your mind. You know, it is just Frankenstein, but it's a solid adaptation.
Yeah, and so you know, this week we were talking about Tales of Frankenstein. And next week, we're also going to be talking about Tales of Frankenstein.
You know what? I'll be honest. I did kind of read ahead as I was telling Anthony before we started recording, and it's a treat. It's going to be fun. It ain't going to be good, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, this is one that I have not seen, and I know we're going to be in for a wild ride. So this movie, since we're talking about multiple movies with the same title, to make sure we're clear here, this is the 2018 movie called Tales of Frankenstein. It's written and directed by Donald F. Glut. So if you want to try to track it down in the meantime, that's the one we'll be talking about next week. And yeah, everything I've seen about it looks like it's going to be bananas. So I'm very excited to dig into it.
Oh yeah, I'm ready for it. So where can they find us, Anthony?
All right, so yeah, you can find us on the socials, Twitter and Instagram at the Frankencast. Follow us there, send us DMs. We're always looking to talk to people. You can also email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. And then, of course, you know, if you're listening to us, you know where to find us to listen.
It's possible you're listening to us on YouTube. If so, give us a like, do a subscribe, do all the things, hit all the buttons.
Yeah, wherever you're finding us, there are like and subscribe and rates and review type options in those places, and we would definitely appreciate getting those wherever you are.
Absolutely.
All right, so I guess that does it for this week. I it's a little short episode, but we were talking about a short movie, so join us next week for what will probably be a lot more, a lot longer and weirder episode.
Trust me, I can tell you right now, we're gonna have a lot to say about it. All right, well, if that's it, there's only one thing left to do, and that's to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.